Okay, we're on to the cartilage or cartilages of the larynx or larynx. And over here is a diagram, and you can see this is the hyoid bone. Remember how small that was. If you're wondering where this area is, anatomy, we use models. Here's our one of our models that we use, and this area right here underneath, well, this is called the thyroid cartilage, and on the other side of that is the larynx where the vocal cords are. See, here's the thyroid gland, and then you see down here the lungs. There's the trachea, and there's branching. This is called the left and right main bronchus, primary bronchus, or bronchi. So this area is blown up for this particular picture. Here's the thyroid cartilage, and then below this, right here, that cartilage that goes around here, the margins, that's called the cricoid, so the bottom part. There's a ligament between these two, but this is all made of hyaline cartilage. This is the trachea, little C-ringed cartilage area of the windpipe. Now, the epiglottis is in the back. And on our PowerPoint here, I gave you a pretty good diagram. This little guy in the back, see, there's the epiglottis. See how it's sticking up? That's the part that folds over the glottis so that food and water doesn't go down the trachea. And then these little areas on each side here, these are called the arytenoid cartilage, and this is the cricoid cartilage. So on our picture, see, the epiglottis kind of comes up this way. This is the arytenoid, little bottom part. And there's a left and a right. And it says alteration in the ligaments. It's connected to the vocal cords. And then here's the corniculate. They look like little beaks or talons. They're really small. The cuneiform cartilage would be on the sides of the larynx. So that's all of the laryngeal cartilage. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, here is a good computer illustration of what are called the laryngeal cartilages, the larynx, the cartilages of the larynx. See up here, thyroid cartilage, so I can highlight that there. Here is the cricoid, and there's that ligament I was telling you about. This is the cricothyroid membrane and ligament. And then I'm going to click on this, thyrohyoid membrane, but we're doing these. So there's the thyroid cartilage, there's the cricoid. Down here, you can see the trachea. Now I'm going to turn this guy around. Be careful with it. I'm going to click on the arytenoid. There we go, super up close view. So back view of the cricoid, this there is the thyroid portion. And see where I just highlighted this? That is the epiglottis. And you can see, well, it's blue. It is a little bigger in this particular diagram. There's the hyoid bone. You see it going around the back. But I'm going to click back on the arytenoid. So here's the right arytenoid cartilage. There's the left. Here's the cricoid, excuse me. Here's the corniculate, the right one, and that's the left corniculate. They're very small. They almost look like a beak or a talon of some kind when you turn them, on our models and such. When you turn them sideways, you see they look like, to me, little talons on a bird. And while I have this is interesting. We've had this talk before in our anatomy class, but here I'm highlighting it. It says the true vocal cords right here, and there's the glottis. Now it's really not letting me highlight that, but then here are the upper folds. You see like that, and those are the false vocal cords, or the vestibular ones. Okay, so that is all of the larynx cartilages. Okay, on to the trachea. Now, this is actually a pretty good picture. The trachea, they are C-shaped rings of hyaline cartilage, and you have a picture like this in your PowerPoint. There's the thyroid cartilage, there's the cricoid, You see it comes down this way. On average, it depends on the size of a person. It's 12.5 centimeters by 2.5 centimeters across. If you look in the back of it, you can see that they are C-shaped. This coming down this way, now this says left main bronchus. On our lab list, we use primary bronchus or primary bronchi. The right is over here, and then you can see how it branches into these little smaller divisions. The way the bronchial tree works is it comes down and then it branches out into these small little smaller bronchioles, and eventually it goes down to ones that are called tertiary, and then from there it goes down to what's called a terminal bronchiole and then a respiratory bronchiole. So they're really small. This is big. This is a little smaller, the primary bronchi. The secondary are smaller, and then you can just see they go all different directions. The lungs have lobes. There's a right, middle, and a superior, middle, inferior right lobe, and there's a superior, inferior left lobe. And each lobe has what's called a lobule, and then that's all connected to alveoli. And so some of the airways get really small. And they are lined by a ciliated, remember it's called the pseudostratified ciliated columnar, is what it's actually called. Now, like I was saying, the bronchial tree, I showed you that, the main primary bronchi, and then the branches of the bronchial tree. Okay, the alveoli. Now, on the ends of what you saw there, the tertiary and the computer little program, you see they get really small. And those tertiary come down and they make these little terminal bronchioles, which then go into these. See these branching this way and that way? These are respiratory bronchioles, which you can actually see those in slides sometimes. And then those eventually come what's called the alveolar duct, which leads into this area called these are alveolar sacs. And then over here you see it says the alveoli or individual air sacs. So the way those work, and I thought I had typed this in. Let me see. I did not, so I'll do this real quickly. So surfactant. There's a cell type in here called alveolar type 2 cells, and they produce surfactant. Surfactant is a chemical. And what surfactant does So surfactant is a chemical that decreases the surface tension of water molecules in the alveoli. The alveoli are really small, they're tiny. I probably have a more accurate representation here, what they look like. That picture's good too, but you see what happens is here are the alveolar sacs and the individual, like it says here, alveoli. They're very fragile, they're moist. And you have to remember, water is a polar molecule. Water has a slightly positive end and a negative end. The electrons get pulled over to one side of a water molecule because of the way it's configured. And so water sticks together. And without surfactant, these little alveoli would stay collapsed. The water would stick together and collapse these alveoli, and a person would not be able to breathe. That's why babies born prior to 7 months, they don't produce surfactant yet and have to be on a ventilator. But the way these alveoli work, see here is a pulmonary artery or arteriole. See, they wrap around each alveola like this, and then that's a pulmonary vein going back to the heart. So the blood coming in is low on oxygen, deoxyhemoglobin. As it goes across the alveoli, it picks up oxygen. It picks up oxygen and unloads carbon dioxide. That's why it's got the red color, and then that's the part coming back, and that gets shipped back to the left atrium, left ventricle, and then goes to the whole body. All of it together. There's a little bit larger alveoli. You see carbon dioxide moving into the lungs. That actually gets exhaled, that in water. there's oxygen moving in. That's why it's getting the red color when it's leaving. And that wall of the alveoli is simple squamous epithelium, so it's very thin, easily diffusible membrane, and that's how blood picks up oxygen. Me and this respiratory outline are not getting along very well today. That's just another picture. I didn't want to. There we go. So here is the, like I was saying, terminal bronchiole. These are respiratory bronchioles. That's an alveolar duct, and these are alveolar sacs. And here's one more diagram. Deoxygenated blood's coming in. Oxygen's moving into the bloodstream. CO2 is moving into the lungs. All of this is by diffusion. These are alveolar type 1 cells. The type 2 cells actually make surfactant that allow these to ventilate. And then you see the blood leaving. That's oxygenated blood because it's picked up oxygen coming into the lungs. I need to do some work on this respiratory outline, but it's going to have to do for now. So onto the lungs. It says the lungs are soft, spongy, cone-shaped organs in the thoracic cavity, and they are sort of bordered by the ribs. The ribs actually keep them from overinflating, and there's 3 lobes on the right, and there's 2 lobes on the left, and they are separated by what are called these fissures. See, there are the little grooves on each side. There's the superior, middle, inferior. Over here is the superior. Over here is an inferior. Here's the trachea, and it even says here are the main bronchi, and then the secondary ones, and then the tertiary ones, which are really small. There are 2 membranes, is what this is showing. Small writing, but the visceral is the little red one close to the lungs. The parietal is the one on the outside. There is a space between those 2 membranes. They hold everything in place. They have what's called serous fluid, which is this really slick fluid that has the consistency of egg whites. And the diaphragm is the breathing muscle, and the 2 layers of serous membranes. And like I was saying, lungs, it says here that the infant lungs are red because infant hemoglobin is even stronger than adult hemoglobin, carrying more oxygen. Healthy lung, they're grayish pink. It says in a smoker that they're black. But there's the divisions of the lung lobes, and then we've kind of talked about this, that they all go to a smaller globule. That's why the bronchioles get smaller. And the cardiac notch is the area where the heart would actually sit. Okay, I am going to start there next.